Hey y'all, and welcome back to another Doomsday Cult. Remember, day 8, Chaz Daybell, and I'm gonna do my commentary as we go. Okay, all right.
Prosecutors Wood and Blake, Mr. Wixom and Ms. Beatty, as well as Mr. Pryor here with the defendant, Mr. Daybell. Officer Hart was on direct examination as we broke for the weekend, and I believe the state has additional direct. Is that correct, Ms. Blake?
That is correct, Your Honor. Thank you.
All right. If you'd go ahead and call your witness, then we'll have him return to the stand.
The state will call Agent Hart.
All right, thank you. Agent Hart, you are still under oath for purposes of your testimony. That oath was given last week. In addition, I'll just inquire over the weekend, or since you were on the stand, have you reviewed any of this trial that's been is available online and has been live streamed? Have you reviewed any of the testimony?
Why has he got a computer in front of him?
With that, then, Ms. Blake, you can continue on your direct.
Thank you, Your Honor. And I do have a modified slide, a courtesy copy for the court, and one for Your Honor as well. Or one for the court and one for Your Honor. Defense has already been provided one. And Your Honor, this is part of State's Exhibit 183. May I publish that exhibit?
Yes, and just to be clear, the identifier information's been redacted on what's going to be published.
Correct, Your Honor.
Yes, you may publish.
Agent Hart, we were here last Friday, and we had been talking about some texts exchanged regarding Charles' death. Do you recall that?
I do.
And do you recall talking about the beneficiary in relation to Charles' death?
Yes, there had been a series of text messages between Lori Vallow and Chad Daybell that indicated Lori Vallow had found out that her husband, Charles Vallow, had changed the beneficiary of his life insurance policy.
And the images on this slide, is that what we're seeing here?
Well, previously there were text messages, and then approximately 2 weeks, 10 days later, Lori Vallow sent 2 MMS messages to Chad Daybell on July 28th of 2019. The one on the left is the original life insurance policy that shows Lori Vallow, his spouse, as the beneficiary to receive 100% of the proceeds of that policy. And this one over here shows the change in beneficiary to Ella K. Woodcock and the date that that was done.
And do you know who Ella K. Woodcock is in relation to Charles Vallow?
It's his sister.
And do you know who she is in relation to J.J. Vallow?
She would be JJ's grandmother.
And again, these messages were sent to Chad Daybell.
By Lori Vallow, correct.
And if we go to the next slide, I'm going to pause here and allow the jurors to read.
They ain't even paying attention to the case. They playing with the computer.
And Agent Hart, when we look at these messages, we talked before, there were additional messages in the iCloud account. Is that correct?
There are thousands of text messages in the iClouds, yes.
And with these particular messages, were there some preceding messages in relation to these?
Chronologically, yes, there were.
And when we're looking at these messages, do you know who the Mel is that's being referred to?
Yes, that's Melanie Boudreau, Lori Vallow's niece.
And what was it about these particular messages that caught your attention?
What caught my attention was the conflict that existed between Lori Vallow and Chad Daybell as it relates to their relationship. At this point, Charles Vallow has been dead for almost a month, and Lori Vallow wants her and Melanie Boudreau to travel to Rexburg, Idaho to spend time with Chad Daybell. Chad Daybell is, of course, still married to Tammy Daybell, and so that
It's sustained.
So you were indicating that Melanie Boudreau and Lori were wanting to go to Rexburg to visit Chad.
correct.
And can you read the date on these messages into the record?
The date of this text string is August 7th of 2019.
And then at the bottom, are there some that carry into the next day?
Correct, August 8th of 2019.
During this time, do you know if Tammy Daybell was still alive?
She was.
So in this context, it appears that Lori's telling Melanie, we just had a big fight. Do you know who that's in reference to?
That's in reference to Lori Vallow and Chad Daybell.
And at this time, Charles has been dead for not quite a month.
Correct.
What else about these stood out to you?
There's a conflict between Lori Vallow and Chad Daybell regarding.
I think there's inadequate foundation at that point. Mr. Pryor, moving forward on your objections, please use the microphone. Go ahead, Ms. Blake.
Agent Hart, again, you've talked about you went through thousands of messages in this iCloud account, or that there were thousands of messages, correct?
Yes.
Were there some messages preceding this indicating what Chad's plans were during this time?
Yes.
And what did those messages indicate?
Chad Daybell had a.
All right, again, into the microphone, please, Mr. Pryor, or maybe your mic's not on today, but. Okay, could we get that checked, please, to make sure the microphone is functioning at defense table?
That showed in here.
So if I remember, this is 6. This is 37. Okay, apologies. Ms. Blake, would you ask another question? I'll defer ruling on that objection. Go ahead.
Agent Hart, did you review messages that indicated what Chad's plans were during this time frame?
Yes, it's a scheduling conflict. Lori Vallow wanted to visit Chad Daybell.
Judge, I'm going to object. It's unresponsive.
Your Honor, may I respond?
Well, I'll sustain the objection because the answer was what Chad's plan. The question was what were Chad's plans, and the answer was what Lori Vallow wanted. I think that's outside the scope of the question and the foundation that's been laid. So it's non-responsive.
You determined that Chad Daybell had different plans during this time?
Judge, objection. That's leading.
Your Honor, he's already answered that.
Overruled.
Yes, he had a family vacation planned.
Chad, I made something.
So in reference to the big fight, based on your investigation, were you able to determine what this text thread was about?
Yes.
And what did you determine the fight to be about?
Lori Vallow's trip which conflicted with Chad Daybell's family vacation.
Why do he
And
have
when we
a
look at those last
laptop
three
in front of him?
messages,
I never seen that before.
did anything about those catch your attention?
From the content of the iCloud, this was the first big fight they had had. And it appeared that they were at odds with one another. And Chad Daybell's comments was that his heart was crushed and he would never stop loving her.
Oh,
And if we go to the next slide, again, I'm going to pause to allow the jurors to read.
can somebody explain to me why do he have a laptop in front of him? Chad. Instead of, why wouldn't he have a laptop? That's
And
not
Agent
cool.
Hart, can you indicate the date of these text messages?
Yes, it's towards the end of the day on August 8th of 2019.
Is this a continuation from the conversation we saw on the previous slide?
Correct.
In looking at this, was there something that stood out to you?
Yes.
And what was that?
If you look at the date and the time, you can see that Lori Vallow has ceased to communicate with Chad Daybell for approximately a day. And this lengthy text, line 1300, is a very clear example of how Chad Daybell used his supposed visionary powers to manipulate Lori Vallow.
Judge, I'm going to object. Calls for speculation.
Overruled.
And in this, there's,
Excuse
sorry,
me.
let me back up.
They have four screens up, y'all. That's why I'm doing it like this.
In that first message as well, from Chad to Lori, can you read the second sentence of that?
Saddest day of my life.
And again, you indicated Lori had quit communicating with them after the previous message that we saw.
That's correct. So there had been no communication from Lori Vallow to Chad Daybell on August 8th, 2019.
And after Chad sends that lengthy text, it appears Lori resumes communication. Is that correct?
Yes.
And can you read into the record what she said?
I love you.
And then Chad responds just,
Thank you, my love. I will get things restored.
so in that lengthy one, he indicated that he may not be able to protect her anymore.
What?
Correct. Grandpa Keith is Lori's deceased grandfather. So Chad Daybell is indicating to Lori Vallow that he is unable to protect her and that the angels are angry that she is ignoring him. And so he is trying to get her to respond due to those indication of what's happening spiritually.
And then once she does respond, Chad will get things restored.
That's what he indicates, yes.
Manipulative. Manipulative.
Then if we move to the next slide, I'm going to pause to allow the jurors to read.
They went on a killing streak for money.
And will you indicate the date this message was sent?
This is August 10th of 2019.
And what about this particular message stood out to you?
Well, I think this is an example of how Lori Vallow manipulates Chad Daybell.
What? I told y'all, manipulative.
And this image was sent along with the surprises or waiting text. Is that correct?
That's correct.
And again, on August 10th, is Tammy Daybell still alive?
Yes.
Moving to the next slide, and again, I'll pause to allow the jurors to read. And if you could read into the record the date these messages were sent.
These are August 10th of 2019.
So these would have been sent after that image that we saw in the previous slide.
Correct.
What, if anything, about these caught your attention?
There had been several messages preceding these two messages indicating their ability to connect spiritually, to enter into portals, to be together outside the physical realm. What stood out to me about these two messages is that both Lori Vallow and Chad Daybell understand that's not real and it's not true. Lori Vallow says, I wish you were really here to experience this with me. And again, saying, I wish I could wake up and kiss your sweet, tender lips for real. So to me, that indicated an understanding between being together truly in the physical realm in which we live versus this alleged ability to portal and be with one another spiritually.
And if we go to the next slide, again, I'm going to pause to allow the jurors to read. Can you indicate the date these messages were sent into the record?
Yes, this is August 11th of 2019.
And what about these particular messages caught your attention?
These four messages are the beginning of a text string that occupies this slide and the next 5 slides. And it's a lengthy back and forth between Chad Daybell and Lori Vallow regarding a vacation that Chad Daybell is going on with his wife, Tammy Daybell, and other relatives.
And in relation to that trip, can you read the last sentence of that first text?
Partly why I am so sad is my Boise trip has turned into a trip with extended family. Not happy about it.
And then if we move down to that third message, was there something about that that caught your attention?
Well, these are Chad Daybell's own words. He says, I can't take much more, so trapped. So it's an indication of how he's feeling as it relates to his current situation as it existed on August 11th of 2019.
We move to the next slide, and I'll pause to allow the jurors to read.
Why is he on that laptop? Okay, y'all, this is on August the 11th, okay? This text is from Chad Daybell to Lori. No, but the next 2 days will be tortured. Thankfully, I will be alone most of Wednesday and beyond. And I guess Lori respond back.
And Agent Hart, you indicated this is a continuation from the previous slide, is that correct?
Yes.
What about these messages caught your attention?
First of all, the date caught my attention. This is 1 month to the day after Charles Vallow had been killed, and approximately 10 months into the relationship between Lori Vallow and Chad Daybell. Subsequent to Charles Vallow's death, the pressure being put by Lori Vallow on Chad Daybell for them to be together increased significantly. And so you see in these messages that Lori Vallow is asking, is that what he wants, for me to sit around waiting for you endlessly and you miserably wasting time? It doesn't feel right. And so these messages are a good indication of their thoughts as it relates to their ability to be together in the current circumstances that they find on that date.
And in that first message, Chad refers to it as torture.
Referring to the 2 days he's going to spend with his family as torture, yes.
And you indicated Charles Vallow's been dead for about a month, correct?
Exactly 1 month.
But Tammy's still alive.
Yes, she is.
And moving to the next slide again, I'm going to pause to allow the jurors to read.
I'm gonna sit it here so y'all can read it yourself, okay?
And Agent Hart, you indicated this is also a continuation from the previous two slides, is that correct?
Yes, it is.
When you look at these particular messages, what stood out to you?
Again, it's a clear communication between Lori Vallow and Chad Daybell regarding the status of their relationship and Lori Vallow's desire to be together overtly with Chad Daybell.
And when we look at the last message, the response from Chad to Lori, can you read that into the record?
Yes. Oh, honey, that is so crushing. I feel so destroyed inside. You know my love for you is deep and real. I want change. I'm constantly begging for change. I want you. Nothing else matters. But I am hindering your life and you deserve better. I love you so intensely.
Mm.
And at this point in time, again, Charles died 1 month ago, correct?
Yes.
But Tammy's still alive.
Yes.
Mm-mm.
And
Wonder
moving to
what
the
he's
next
talking
slide again,
about.
I'll pause to allow the jurors to read.
Okay, y'all, sit it right here. take that long to read it. Look at Chad acting like he
Agent Hart, on that previous slide, we'd seen that Chad was begging for change so he could be with Lori. Is that correct?
Yes.
What would need to change so he and Lori could be together?
Judge, objection calls for speculation.
Sustained.
Agent Hart, when we look at this slide, is it a continuation from the last several slides?
Yes,
And it's still on August 11th of 2019?
that's correct.
What about these messages stood out to you?
This demonstrates Lori Vallow's impatience for this plan that I've testified to previously about the life they want to live, where they want to live it, and their plans to be together and conduct missions together. And so Lori wants that to happen, and that can't happen while Tammy Daybell is still married to Chad Daybell.
And again, to remind the jurors, in these messages, did you ever see any indication that Chad was intending to divorce Tammy?
Never.
Did you ever see any indication that Chad was intending to separate from Tammy?
No.
Nope. He loved her. Love him some
So go
Lori.
to the next slide. Again, I'm going to pause to allow the jurors to read it.
They had a plot.
And again, Agent Hart, this is a continuation from the previous slides. Is that correct?
It is.
What about these particular messages stood out to you?
Previously, on August 8th of 2019, when this conflict about Chad Daybell's family vacation came up, we saw the text message about Grandpa Keith and that the angels were angry that Lori Vallow was ignoring Chad Daybell. The middle line of this text is a reference to that exchange that occurred 3 days previously, where Lori Vallow is now asking Chad Daybell, are you going to threaten me that I'm unprotected for putting Chad Daybell aside? And his response is absolutely not. I'm so upset at the circumstances. I'm demanding they protect you more than ever. So this was a tie back to the August 8th conversation with Chad Daybell.
Mm-mm.
And again, an indication that Chad Daybell can provide some form of protection.
Correct.
Looking specifically at that second text from Chad to Lori, are there certain things in that text that stood out to you?
Absolutely.
What were those?
The first is, it's mainly the second sentence. We are surrounded by celestial relatives that are simply obstacles.
I know, that freaked me out.
Do you know what the reference celestial relatives would be in relation to? Or actually, let me back up. Through your investigation, did you learn or determine what celestial relatives would be referencing?
Yes.
What did you learn that to be?
The word celestial derives from the LDS faith. It is the lowest level or degree of glory or heaven. And then there are levels above that. So it's a reference to the lowest level of heaven as